I do that, you recall that in the earlier session, where we had the topic on the rule of law, we ought to have had with us one of the learned Sikhs in Nigeria, and in the person of Mr. Quakers. I apologize for not recognizing you earlier on, sir. However, we want to have the fact that we have you with us now. We will have you also speak to that particular topic while we have this session. So don't be surprised that I'm going to invite you up to this podium. So I will just go on without having to waste our time, like I said earlier, to call each of these persons to the podium while I read the profile. So can we have, and in this order, I'll call on Mr. Norrison Quakers, S.A.N. Can we kindly? Please, thank you very much, sir. Can we also have Mr. Tunde Irukera? Thank you very much, sir. Welcome, Mr. So I would follow by inviting Mr. Afolabi Sholebo. Thank you. 1968 in Kaduna, Nigeria. He attended University of Ilorin Staff School and Federal Government College, Ilorin, between 1978 and 1985. Obafemi Awolowo University and University of Ilorin, where he studied law. Thereafter, he attended the Nigerian Law School between 1989 and 1990. Mr. Irukera is a fine lawyer with over 30 years experience, and prior to government service, he worked at Rims Merchant Bank and Associated Properties and Trust PLC. That was between the year 1990 and 1995. He was a partner at Thomas and Irukera LLC, Chicago, United States, between 1997 and the year 2000. Managing partner at Partners, Attorneys and Counselors, LLC, also in Chicago between 2000 and 2006. Partner at Simons Cooper Partners, Lagos, Nigeria since 2006. Director General of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, since January 2018. Previously known as the Consumer Protection. His personality has been severally described as humble, courteous, diligent, and gentle. And he is also considered an omoluabi. I think that deserves a special applause. You're not waiting for me to ask you to stand up, sir. Now, Mr. Sholebo Afolabi Adebayo is the General Manager of the Lagos State Consumer Protection Agency. He bagged his Bachelor of Law degree in 1997 from the Lagos State University, Ojo, and was called to the bar in 2001. In 1998, he joined the Lagos State Civil Service in the office of the Directorate for Citizens' Rights. Programs with both local and international bodies, and has attended courses in South Africa, United Kingdom, and the United States. He is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association and the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. detailed of the learned silk, Dr. M.N.O. Olokpade. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Olokpade is the principal partner of Niyi Olokpade and Co., a leading commercial law firm.
Judgment in the light of the decision in Cadre Nigerian PSC versus Federal Board of Inland Revenue, citation provided. Profession. What the FCCPC Act has heralded is that there is a new sheriff in town as far as competition law is concerned. It therefore becomes imperative for any legal practitioner who wishes to take advantage of it to jump on the train and become an adept expert. We are all aware of the famous quotation of Charles Darwin to the effect that it is not the strongest of the species that survive. Thank you very much.
That applause is not resounding. I think no other person would have done significant or substantial justice the way the learned silk has done it. I think the one for me that caught on an ignorant lawyer. Perhaps we'll ponder and think through that. But very interesting delivery. A round of applause once again. Next.
Yes, before the moderator goes on, let's quickly recognize in our midst the honorable judges of the Lagos State High Court who are present with us. Honorable Justice Babatunde Kalaro is here with us. Please kindly, we are indeed very grateful for your presence. We equally have, once again, Honorable Justice A.O. Shola Doye in our midst. We are grateful. Moderator, you can go.
Thank you very much. Without much ado, I would want to call on Mr. Babatunde Rukera. Interestingly, I'm sure all of the highlights that was given by the last speaker, we can say that he's the autochthonous settler of not only the FCCPC, but perhaps when he was mentioning the drafters, I'm sure he'll be able to perhaps allude or respond to one or two things that you must have said. I'd like to present to us Mr. Babatunde Rukera to give us an overview from the standpoint of the law. Thank you very much.
My lords, learned seniors at the bar, the executive team at the IKEJA Bar Association, the chairman of the planning committee for Law Week this 2024. While my friend, real good friend, brother, and learned senior, me, was able to refer to the chair of the committee as his friend and express gratitude to him as a mentor and for inviting him. But I'm not able to say that. I am here by compulsion. He literally said to me, "You will be here on this day," and I am here. And so that also, so that's a reflection that perhaps because I'm not a senior yet, even though I am taller, he can compel me while he has to be courteous to my friend and neighbor. And I must also protest that here he's put me in a very unusual team. I mean, even learned senior Mr. Quakers would have left, but he had to include the team also. So here on the speakers that council is moderating, you have an active practicing senior advocate, another one who's also literally an associate professor of competition law, Dr. Olokpade, and the general manager and the major domo of consumer protection in Lagos State. And he puts me, an unemployed fellow, smack in the middle of all these people. But I think he should have allowed me to speak before the academician. Someone who has a recently well-minted PhD degree. Certainly I shouldn't speak after him. But as he was speaking, I was realizing, what I thought was, I realized my own folly. Because as friends and neighbors, I know how much work he was doing and all the travel. And I used to think, why is he doing all of this? I'm not going to do anything like this. But now I see that I wish I had done the same. Maybe I'd be able to speak nearly as eloquent. But yes, I had the unenviable burden of being a first-generation chief executive of the FCCPC. I started work first as the Director General of the then Consumer Protection Council, and then worked very assiduously. At the time, in 2017, Nigeria had struggled and tried relentlessly from as early as year 2 from getting it. I remember we did a poll in that 2017, and Nigeria was the only country in the top 15 countries in the world from a population standpoint that didn't have a composite competition authority. In fact, the next 6 after Nigeria had, so Nigeria was the one that broke it from being 21 at the time. Nigeria was obviously, there was no country with the GDP or the economy the size of Nigeria that didn't have a competition authority. Competition regulatory environment. And little wonder we haven't gotten the best of our privatization efforts. For instance, the quickest example is look at our electricity markets. We essentially created statutory and natural monopolies. I mean, we looked at this big mammoth utility company and broke it into different, broke it into generation, and said everybody can go generate, and took the transmission and made it a monopoly, correct? And then prohibited others from trying to embed and everything. If you hit a certain megawatt, you put it on the grid. Wasn't that the rule? And so essentially you're saying, no, it has to be just, this mammoth. And then with the distribution companies, you would think that, okay, so we have the downstream where it's going to be retailed. But what did we do again? We created monopolies by giving each of the distribution companies a franchise market. And so if you live in a certain part of Lagos, you cannot choose whether you want IKEJA or Eko. You have to, your franchise area determines. And so if we had a composite competition law at the time, it would have been a violation of law to privatize even in that manner. And so that's where we've come from. And so we had the work of fighting against vested interests and promulgating the law. And finally, the story of how we promulgated that law is stuff that movies are made of. And yes, I admit, for all the failures in that piece of legislation, that I was a key part of writing it. And so for the good parts of it, you can give me the credit. For the parts you don't like, blame all the other people who worked on the team. But you made a very important point, and to see that you actually understood the strategy, and I don't know how you got to understand it. I, in particular, inserted that section 20 that you identified, which is that lawyers within the agency would be able to conduct representation before the courts as a matter of statute. And the reason was because at the time, so we had to focus on how we could enforce competition law with limited legal knowledge. And so the people within the agency that we were able to spend time and resource training, sent to the FTC in the US, sent to the EU, it was important that at least the first seed for legal enforcement were people who could get the training while the private bar loaded on. And I think he's spoken about most of the different pieces of competition, merger control, restrictive understandings, cartel, which is collusion and price fixing, and any competition, all the way back to the Constitution, especially to Chapter 4. Because what Chapter 4 of our Constitution is really who we want to be, is our aspirations as a nation, correct? And so, but it's always been considered non-justiciable. However, case law has modified that over time to say, well, to the extent that any of the aspirations in Chapter 4 ultimately become reduced to statute, it is no longer non-justiciable because you now have an enforcement mechanism in the law. Although I disagreed with that, I mean, I think the fact that it's in the Constitution makes it enforceable. It's not enforceable against you because it is non-justiciable. Because it is there. It's in the Constitution. But that's an argument for another day, because in reality, competition has now been reduced to provide that there shall be a body created by law that will regulate ownership and control of enterprise. Now, many times, and almost every time I've taken a poll, control to manage to regulate the control and ownership of businesses and enterprise. I asked, what agency do you think the Constitution is referring to? Almost 90% of the people who knew always say, yeah, the Corporate Affairs Commission. But no, the Corporate Affairs Commission is a register. It's a registry. It does not interfere with who you choose to control your business. The real entity that is responsible for managing control is a competition authority, whether through its merger review process, by ensuring that businesses cannot be controlled by the same people direct. I said that their conduct was unilateral. Their increase in subscription rate was unilateral, even though we didn't have a competition law. And it was unilateral to the detriment of consumers, and to the extent that there's a consumer protection framework, anything against that is considered unconscionable or exploitative. Based on that knowledge, and created case law ahead of even statute. Why is this example important? It demonstrates why that knowledge is so vital. And just like Dr. Olabade said again, he said, we need that knowledge everywhere, the judiciary, at the bar, everywhere. See what that knowledge at the judiciary, even before a statute, could do. And so just imagine the proliferation of that knowledge. Recently, just before I was fired for being incompetent, we conducted an investigation, and this company is run as what you call an SEE. In our opinion, we thought the company was run as a single economic entity, fully, completely controlled from the headquarters outside the country. And so we conducted this, executed a dawn raid and took a lot of information from the company. And as the investigation progressed, we had investigative hearings. We must have spent 2 months having investigative hearings. We must have spoken to at least 21 or 22 employees, both from within the country and outside the country, and maybe thousands and thousands, at least 30,000 pages of transcripts. And so the company decided that they would come into cooperation and assistance to resolve their problem instead of to be prosecuted. And everybody, once we started speaking with employees, as you all know, once there's potential liability, especially criminal liability, even co-defendants' interests can become adverse, correct? And to the extent that that risk is existential, it is prudent. Okay. And to the extent that even co-conspirators or collaborators' interests can become adverse, it is prudent that from the very beginning, legal representation is different. Because what can happen when it is not different is counsel can very quickly become conflicted and may not even be able to represent any of the parties. You will not believe what problem it was to find lawyers. We had, I want to say, about 5 affiliate companies before the competition authority. And this large Fortune 500 company, talking a company that could settle over $100 million in penalty in one check. A global company of $64 billion can afford any type of legal representation, but they couldn't find lawyers for each of the entities who understood the process they were confronted with. And what was more, because the employees themselves were confronted with potential liability under the FCCPA for their own individual conduct, the lawyers for the company could not represent the employees. Now, because they're employees of the company, they could have a contractual obligation to pay their legal fees, but there's no way a lawyer representing the company could represent an employee who was willing to be a whistleblower, who was willing to come into cooperation and assistance and say what they know about what happened. And therein came a problem of finding lawyers. And a few days into that investigation, I asked someone, I said, can you go find me information about how many lawyers we have on the roll in Nigeria? Very few circumstances have embarrassed me more than that. To find that we have this many lawyers, yet so few lawyers. And there could only be one reason: lack of scholarship. There are a few firms, the usual suspects, which are otherwise called magic circle firms, who do almost all the notifications and almost all the work. But we were all on that mark on the same day. There's no long history of them having been existing for years and they've cornered all the clients and no. This is a completely new area of law, and businesses were simply looking for expertise, period. And I found it understandable that the initial expertise was within the regulator. But it's 5 years after the law was passed. That expertise should still not reside in there when we have a private bar. I remember a law firm poaching lawyers from the agency to their firms. And they poached one who worked directly under me and assisted me. I was very upset about it. I said, what kind of thing is this? And so to a much more senior colleague, we were talking, the partner in that law firm, I was reporting him to the much senior, and the much more senior colleague said, Tunde, you know, this is something you should be proud of. I said, how can I be proud that they've taken the resources that I invested in? And he said, we live in an environment where this doesn't happen. Serious private sector doesn't go to government to recruit. And so this is a reflection that you've obviously created value in the resources you have in government. Now that's a good thing. But the flip side of it is that the private bar is failing with respect to staying on top of things. And I couldn't, because my friend Nii, who is far franker than I am and can be very brutally frank, he put it far better when he said, quit Taye versus Kende, Ojo against Aino. I would have just said, can we be, I'd have been looking for some more politically correct ways of saying that we should do more scholarly work. And that's why I congratulate IKEJA Bar. And so I didn't think, and that's why I didn't prepare a paper, in addition to the fact that I'm lazy and I'm currently unemployed and resting. But I thought that I'm not going to come to our bar association. This is not a competition law conference. I'm not going to come here and analyze competition principles. I'm not going to come here and try to say what the law says and let's argue about what a merger is. I was just going to come here and say, the law is there. What are we doing with our time? There are very few, if any, at the bar who are ahead of anybody in here today. Very few, if any. And we don't have to go the route of very hardworking, studious people like me. I am the black sheep in my family, the only one without a graduate degree. And it's something that I think still brings my father grief. Because I don't have a master's. I never sat in a competition training classroom. And it might sound to you like that's the typical Nigerian disaster. Buy an airplane and give it to an Okada rider to operate. But I learned. I learned. And for some reason, there are people, including at the bar, who actually, somehow, and I don't know what they're looking at, consider me an authority on competition law in Nigeria without the background. And so what that demonstrates to me is with personal and individual industry, there's nothing, you're unstoppable. You're absolutely unstoppable. And so in a market where there is incredible opportunity, which is so fundamental to society and which is so new, what would be the excuse if you can carve your own niche? What would be the excuse? It would just, for me, it would just come together, create what otherwise seems to be extremely sophisticated and beyond the vast majority of us in here. When in reality, there's really nothing about it. It's just that they had the idea, they had the time, and they had the motivation, and gathered the momentum. It could be us. And so, what I'd say is, imagine an agency whose budget in 2018 was plus or minus 1.3 billion naira from the treasury, of which that budget, about 560 million of it, was for payroll, salaries of the people who worked there. So about 600, 700, 800 maybe for its capital and its overhead, running 9 offices across the country. In 2018, by 2023, that same agency says, no, we don't want anything from the budget, from the treasury anymore. We will fund our own operations. Fund its own, no, I'm going somewhere. And it completely funds its own operations, completely. And for exactly the same number of employees, 240 something, that the payroll was 560 million, moved that payroll, same number of employees, to 2.6 billion in how it increased salaries. And in addition to that, gave the government back almost 40 billion naira. But the trick here is, what I want you to think about is, just imagine lawyers whose regulatory and advisory or litigation work is confronting or dealing with that agency. Surely, it's a place that you can be comfortable. It's a place that you can be comfortable. So that's the point I was trying to make about what is available to make. I have seen lawyers' bills working for businesses that had trouble with the FCCPC. Over a period of a year, they're billing hundreds, literally hundreds of thousands of US dollar. Hundreds. Not talking about total firm revenue. One case, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you know what? My interactions with some of those lawyers tell me they don't even know half of what Dr. Olopade has so clearly, so effortlessly iterated to us. I remember, and I'll close now, a former governor of the central bank promoted a new piece of legislation for banks called the Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act. and not liking the work of the FCCPC, they had a line in there that said that with respect to the banking sector, the FCCPA shall not apply. It shall not apply. And, but picked the merger control laws, the rule says section 32 of the FCCPA shall apply. Such inelegant legal drafting. However, anywhere you see commission in that section 92, replace it with bank, meaning the bank, the central bank. Just imagine the chaotic, I mean, here somebody is already analyzing the registering, the balancing of whether the tribunal and the, so just imagine how quickly and easily he would have been able to address that. But when we were drafting the FCCPA, we knew that sector regulators would be displeased and these kinds of things will happen. And so what we did with the supremacy clause was to say that notwithstanding the provisions of any other law, but that's not enough, because when you go before the court, the judges will still interpret it to say, what if a new law comes after that says notwithstanding any other law? And so we said, notwithstanding any other law, but subject only to the Constitution. Meaning that even laws that come after it, and because you could trace, like he did, to section 16 of the Constitution, you could establish the position of this jurisdictional, the statutory jurisdiction of the regulator in a way that would be unimpeachable. But you know what was interesting? I lined up some of the top firms and some of the not top firms, some of the good law firms. And for weeks, we provided the context one person provided here today. Not one. Real good lawyers, top litigators, experienced, fast speaking, accents, studied everything, all the works, fancy suits, everything. And we sat there and, we just didn't figure it out. And every time at the end of the day, I say, have you looked at this? Have you thought about this? And there was even a simpler one. I said, what about Section 4 of the Constitution? Section 4 of the Constitution, which is the creation of courts, right? The Constitution gives the National Assembly powers to make laws, to create courts, doesn't it? But it also says that same National Assembly would not have the powers to create laws that takes away the jurisdiction of the courts, doesn't it? But the FCCPA also created the tribunal, which is a court, correct? It's that simple. So you cannot, by another law, take away. And it was sensible because we're coming from a military history where you could just give courts powers and take it and put it in your closet and lock it away. And so they say, no, going forward, you can create these courts, but you can't just write a law, another law. You have to repeal the law that creates a court. And so, industry and scholarship, I'm afraid, is missing at our bar. You are not a linesman. You are not a referee. You are an architect. Yours is not to sit and each time your clients will say, no, that's not possible under the law. No. Our role is to hear what the clients want and figure how to design that solution under the framework. And that requires what? Perhaps didn't discuss much of competition, like I told you, I didn't study it. But at least I left you with some thoughts about how you could become the experts that I am not in competition law. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irukera. 1.8 billion to 40 billion. Well-established ground rules, well-established laws, even industry and professionalism to the workforce. I think we should be proud as a bar or as legal practitioners, regardless of whatever it is. it wasn't a sack. It was for you to come to this side of the divide and perhaps begin a training of each and every one of us. A very round of applause once again for Mr. Tunde Iruka. I would have said, even if there is no much celebration or fanfare out there for that outstanding performance over the years, I think as a bar, we deserve awards many times over. Thank you so much for that speech. You didn't write, but you said so much. Thank you so much. We are going to have, our last speaker on this beat, after which I would ask Lanes Quakers to prepare for some inputs, both as it concerns the earlier session, and then perhaps your thoughts as well on this session. I would like to invite to the podium Afolabi Sholebo, the General Manager of the Lagos State Consumer Protection.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Milord, good afternoon, ma. Learned Senior Advocates of Nigeria sitting, the members of the panel, my learned senior, and my colleagues. First and foremost, I want to thank the chairman of the Tiger Bar for inviting me to this panel. But sincerely, I don't know where he is now. I don't know why he keyed me into the midst of these giants. Sincerely, we have Learned Senior Advocate of Nigeria and my brother, Babatunde Iruka. You have done very well. I was accusing the Learned Senior Advocate for separating competition and consumer protection. I'm here for consumer protection, and I will be talking extensively about consumer protection in Lagos State. As we sit here, we are all consumers. You agree with me? Thank you. And how did consumer protection came about in Lagos State? This is far back 2000, when the current president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Attorney General then, the erstwhile Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, created Consumer Protection Unit under the Lagos State Ministry of Justice Directorate for Citizens' Rights. Yes, sincerely, we started then, but it's something that was very new to us. And I can even say till now, so many of us do not know that they have rights under the law as consumers. Fast forward to the year 2014, when a committee sat to discuss about how there should be a law that will back the Lagos State consumer protection. And in 2015, a law established the Lagos State Consumer Protection Agency. And why this? It's because of the avalanche of complaints from members of the public about the way they are being treated, be it goods bought or services rendered. So the agency came with a vision, which is to ensure consumer satisfaction, value for money, and protection from hazardous products. The mission is to promote consumer rights, protection against hazardous products, standard product, and this we do through regular public enlightenment, which is part of what we're still doing here. In the year 2018, the agency actually commenced operation. And I became the general manager of the agency in November 2020. And the mission is very clear: to ensure that consumers in Lagos State get value for money and satisfaction. And we started by ensuring that we have synergy with all stakeholders. And when you talk about stakeholders, the very first place I visited was the judiciary. Yes, I visited the CJ, and from there I moved to the police. I just want you to understand some things about our own job is just to ensure consumers in Lagos State are well protected. So also we visited NAFDAC, we visited the Standard Organization of Nigeria, the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice. And I can remember vividly taking a long journey to Abuja to synergize with my brother because of the good work he was doing there. I was like, me, I don't know anything about protecting consumers. Fast forward, because we discovered that our own is just to protect, and for us to do it, and the paramount interest of going to Abuja to meet with Mr. Babatunde Ekurukerai, because upon careful perusal of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Agency Act, we discovered that there are some issues that are not within the jurisdiction of the state. And lo and behold, the first joint investigation we did is about a particular hospital in Victoria Island. And that opened my eyes to the fact that consumer protection is about not only goods bought, but services rendered. And I can say that without missing words, sir, we've taken on so many hospitals that they've refunded. Consumers don't have rights, but most times, most consumers don't know that they do have rights. And what are the products information? We talk about any consumable NAFDAC number. After the NAFDAC number, you want to look at when the product was actually manufactured. You now also want to look at when the product will no longer be good for you to consume. Then it should be strictly written, the names and addresses of the manufacturers of the product. I think that is what panned out recently about the issue of this recent cholera. So what did we do? We ensured that we went around the nooks and crannies of Lagos, the 5 Ibilez, to ensure that we serve each and every supermarkets and grocery store with compliance notices. Why did we do that? Because once we have compliance notices and we come for you, probably in the course of discrete investigation, we find out that you have expired product in your, no matter, it may be 2, it may be 3, it may be 20, it may be 50. What we do is immediately we seal, we take you to court, we fine. That's what expired products. How many people do know here that there's nothing like no refund policy? But people believe that once you get a receipt from a product and they say goods bought on can never be returned. Thank you, Mr. Babatunde Ekurukerai. Section 120 of that law stated particularly there's nothing like no refund policy. And I stand here to tell you all that with that, in Lagos State, we've got refunds to the tune of over 40 million naira. And this covers different categories. And I can say, because I said earlier that there are some sections that are in the Lagos State Consumer Protection Law that There's some that are in the act that are not in the law. And I can tell you again here that because so many people don't know that they have rights, when it comes to the issue of having to book a flight, get covered over 35 million naira from airlines. Not only local airlines. There are two particular, there's this flight to a local, international flight that will cover 3.2 million naira from them. And what did they do? They paid because they breached consumer rights. There's another one recently that they said the air conditioning in the aircraft was not working. Some of them came to La Scopa, they complained, and we got refund. Let me take you again, because we have synergy with other stakeholders I mentioned earlier. And the one that started was the one that happened at the City Mall in IKEJA. A particular complainant bought an 85 inches television set. And within a week, it started giving issues. And I was in my house on that Saturday morning. I was preparing to watch football match Arsenal. Laugh at me. Then the man called and, oh, Mr. Sholibo, please I have a situation here. I said, what is this, sir? He said, I bought television here from blah, 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 and they said they cannot replace or refund. I said, well, posted staff. I called about 15 minutes. I just saw them wheeling another, you know how big an 85 inches television. I just saw them wheeling the television set. Then the man told me, Mr. Sholebo, is this for me? I don't know, let him come and tell us if it's actually for you. And the man walked to me and said, sir, so I've become sir. Sir, this is the TV set. And I told him immediately, owners must respect
that today is being flagged started in relation to maritime law and maritime practice. Before now, there was no arbitration. And the reason why they inserted that was because they saw Nigerian lawyers as sharks, ready to eat anything and anybody that crosses their path. And so even having arbitration in Nigeria became a problem. So they started having and you cannot have an arbitral proceeding or hearing in the UK as a foreign company, particularly a Nigerian company, and get the people that the constitution is made for do not even know. So that's a problem on its own. And that's who we are. You see, there's no point missing the words. If today we understand, and that's where I was a bit weary. In fact, I wanted to pull today that, look, don't go into the financial benefits, that the money that is involved, something, all kinds of people will come up and come up with all kinds of creators, or either iconic places, buildings, and all of that. While we're busy with our Gucci bags, buying things, they are looking at what they can replicate in their own country. While we're busy to look good, they're looking at technology that they can steal to go and replicate. Are you aware that today, as we speak, China has well over 1,000 brand of cars? Over 1,000 brand of cars. The most expensive car today is called the Huan, whether 600 or so. The most expensive is made by China. Guess what? It is the only car that they have done now that you can park vertically or horizontally. Go back and forth before you park. Just with that space and with the camera, you just do like that and then the car goes into the slot. An American governor went to China for the purpose of buying that car, and he bought two for his own country. How do you compete with a country like that? How? How do you start implement if all of us come together, not for the purpose of using it to make money for ourselves, but to ensure that the rules are enforced, the law is enforced to the letter, we will not be where we are today. But all of us are looking for opportunities. Somebody once said to me, a junior of mine, he was in the library and he saw the books, and we were buying books, and he said, "Na book we want chop." Say na book we want chop. You understand? Say na book we want chop. Forgetting the fact that, look, I'm going to mention the name of a law firm, and I don't care whether we're in competition or not. Colleagues, you cannot compete with a law firm that invests millions and billions in information technology and research. It's not permanent. It is subject to events happening. And depending on who the maiden is, if the maiden is Ijebu, and the person before the court is Ijebu, it will lift the veil to see who's. And that's why we're where we are. Gentlemen, it is important that we reflect seriously on all of this. And I thank the organizers of this session, or this, I won't call it a conference. It's more like an eye-opener for all of us. Earlier, I was asked to speak on governance, public governance at troubled times. I took time to quickly go through it, and I decided that rather than present a paper, I would just quickly put some thoughts down and just share with us. First and foremost, understand this. Governance is anchored on a document called the Constitution. All right? It is to guide us. It is to direct us. And it's all about the masses. It's all about the society. It's all about the public. In our earlier days as law students, we were taught that law is an instrument of what? Social engineering. It is to order our steps. It's to correct us. It's to put us on track. It is to bring about development in society. So when you now have the Constitution, we, the people, we have agreed to have a book that we call the Constitution. And it says in section 1 sub 1 that the Constitution is what? Supreme, and has binding force on all authority and persons. Ask yourself this question. Have we had constitutional infraction by the executive? The answer is yes. Not once, not twice. Do we have institutions, for instance, that can impeach a president or a governor when he goes outside of it? The answer is yes, but they will never. So you go and look at the process by which some of these people emerge. And that's why some of us are also weary. My friend here is a judge. I've made up my mind if I have to see him, I have to be very careful where I see him. You know, there's a presumption of adultery, all right? When two consenting adults, right, that are not married to one another, come out of a secluded place, it is presumed that something has happened. Am I right? Good. So it's the same thing. If I have a matter, and I know I have one or two matters before him, right? If the other side see me, visit him, even if it's for socials, and they see me coming out, in Kotisele, something has happened. So we must avoid all of these things. And that's how the rule of law also operates. The consciousness to detach yourself from any influence. The consciousness says it is supreme and it binds all. So in other words, if someone has infracted the law, for instance, and the person is in government, he can be investigated, even though he cannot be arrested or be prosecuted. But you must do what you need to do. Earlier, you recall, I said that the DG of the Consumer Protection Commission in Lagos State is doing the things he's doing because of his own passion. Since Professor Dora Akunyili left NAFDAC, has it been effective? It's not. Why? Because you have people that are passionate about these things. Our laws can also work if we are passionate. So good governance can only happen if you look at the characteristics of good governance. One of it is participation. We must all participate in governance and not see governance as a place for the dregs. But they're the ones calling the shots. They're the ones deciding our faith. Many of us say, in fact, I learned of a religious group that does not believe in politics, that does not believe in governance. How? How can you be in a system and you now have all kinds of people in government and they are not also accountable? Because you're not participating, you're not even asking questions. Which takes me to the issue of accountability. We must demand accountability from those that represent us, because you have the power to also recall. If good governance is failing, you have the power to recall. But what do we have? Say, it's our personal. Right now, it is the Emiloko generation. I mean, we're all there. It's our turn. You know why we say it is the Emiloko generation? Somehow, somewhere, there's someone in this government you're connected to. So this is our own time. I said to my wife, why should I congratulate someone who has just been appointed as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Why? Why should I congratulate him? Am I congratulating him because of what I stand to benefit? A friend of mine of blessed memory said he sat down one day and he was in the house of one-time Minister for Information, and Babangida had just become the head of state. His wife was seated there. That he just went towards his wife and said, Owodi, Owodi. Say, money has come. Money has come. And he was jumping up. You see, whether we like it or not, we have all contributed to the rot in the system. Our failure to speak when we ought to speak. Our failure to challenge when we ought to challenge. A client of mine came to me and said her children relocated from the UK to Nigeria. Her son-in-law was given an employment by the government, right? And suddenly, he went back to the UK and bought a house at Canary Island, a place they were coming from. And he bought another property in Ikoyi. Now, he's not even a commissioner, he's a special advisor. Yeah, and he was making a lot of money. So she went to meet him because she said she raised her children to always speak out. And this wife went to meet this husband with very deep pocket. So, boy, I didn't know you have joined them in this stealing galore. And the man said, what? You know what he did? He packed out of the house. He left her in the house. How dare you challenge the Lord of the manor? I'm the one bringing the money. And he left. Now, there are many of us that will not speak out against such things. And it's because of the way we are also wired. All right? Sometimes ask yourself, as lawyers, when you have a case involving a criminal, maybe a civil servant, and he has been adjudged to have stolen 2 billion, and you ask him to pay you 200 million as your fees, ask yourself, what is the basis for that demand? No, what is the basis for that demand? You're asking him to pay you 10% of his loot. You understand? You see, look, a lawyer is worth whatever he wants to ask for. But you must also be guided by your conscience. You must also be careful. The demands that we know a particular senior advocate, at least my brother today to confirm that, who because of peer pressure used his client's money to go and buy a G-Wagon. And you're saying you can imagine, but that's the truth. That's the truth. I've had people sometimes deliberately, I will sit in my Honda Accord, I'm going to court, and I'll see some of my colleagues, you're too much for this one now. Who are you deceiving? And I say to them, I'm not deceiving anybody. Yours has AC. Mine has AC. I can wind down. You can wind down. All the features in your car, my own also has. So why must I compete with you? So competition law should be extended to also look at all of that too. All right. So what are the things that we also need to guard against? I talked about the rule of law. I talked about transparency. How should we approach all of these things? We must not be driven by greed. We must not go out to create an enabling environment for ourselves. If the law must work, we must continually speak to authority. We must continually speak to those who are ahead of us, those who have been given the responsibility to watch over us. I did say, when I referred to section 23 of the 1999 Constitution, that it talks about national ethics, it talks about ethos, it talks about, as a nation, we must have integrity. This is one nation that is integrity deficient. Somebody will come and, when we do a lot of insolvency matters recovery, somebody approaches the bank. Bank, please, I need 200 million, or I need 2 billion. I have this, I have that, I have that. Do you know that some will go as far as cloning documents? Coming home with fake documents. Now the money is given to them. Time to pay back, they go away. In fact, there was one, the land certificate he presented to the bank, he cloned Billings Way. And you ask yourself, didn't the bank also embark on due diligence? Someone said they will also collect their own percentage. You see, so these are some of the problems that is making good governance, even in our system, difficult. Because we, as a people, we can't even demand it because we're also not right in our thinking and also in our attitude. We say you can't give what you don't have. If you're not morally upright, you cannot demand moral consciousness from the Nigerian government. Because we're all the same. Somebody said there are more people waiting to steal than those who are in government. It's just a question of opportunity. The opportunity has not been made available to them. And I'll stop here because of time constraint. The Money Laundering Act. In the UK, there's something they call the Proceeds of Crime Act. Almost similar to ours. The one that empowers the Financial Intelligence Unit. All right? Now, you have the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Are you aware that under the law, they are also vested with the power to also ask persons their means of livelihood? All right? But here, I'm in my house. Let's say today is I know he won't do that now. Let's say today is the chairman of the commission, and his boys come to harass me. Please explain to us how you got the money to do all of these things. All I'll just do is, because I have access to him, today I will be here and you. Please come and take them away. Because that's how we talk. Say they hear you have released your man. Please call them. And what will he do? He will call them. That because of our relationship, that because we're friends. Justice Kekere Ekun, now in the Supreme Court, she did something very unique. Some years ago, when she was still here as a High Court judge, there was a matter before her. Her friend was the one who had the matter before her. Without even discussing with her friend, without discussing with anybody, she returned the file to the chief judge for reassignment. Our friend was happy, say, this file is before my friend. I'm going to get judgment. I'm going to get justice. The friend was excited. Now the other side also knew their relationship. Guess what? She didn't wait for them to even raise it. She raised it herself. That she cannot in good conscience hear this matter that is before her. That This person is my friend. This person I do not know. But it is not unlikely that this person who is my friend, the person that I do not know will know our friendship. And whatever I do, they will read meanings to it. So for that reason, I'm recusing myself from proceeding. And in that wise, I'm also recusing myself from the stage. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, sir. You know, when senior lawyers and learned silks, when they speak, you can't but write copiously and learn from the fountain of knowledge. We thank you, sirs, for this delivery.
Finish.
Okay, very well. I was waiting to have some questions,
I want to make some comments.
one each.
I want to make some comments. before
Okay,
the question.
okay then. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is not vote of thanks, but I just wanted to say a few things, having listened to all the highly resourceful speakers. And we've been talking about competition, and I sometimes have raised this point with some of us, that how do we also develop a policy for competition among lawyers? And I'll give you an example. And I said to people that, look, here am I sit maybe somewhere in Osun State or Ondo State. That's where I practice. And then it is time for election matters. Then you that you are practicing in Lagos, you come to my state again, and then you take all the matters there. Mind you, when you take all the fees, I pay tax in my state. You take everything away. You know, and because the whole idea is also to ensure that, like he said, shared prosperity, but you have a situation where it is becoming winner takes all. And I believe that it is something we seriously need to look at, particularly if we are not going to be paying lip service to federalism. In other places, you can't, at least in the US, you can't think you'll be in New Jersey and New York and everywhere just like that. But we don't have that in place. So I believe it's something, in my view, that we need to look at. Mr. Sholebo, thank you so much for all that you have said. I must say, maybe it's me, but I think perhaps there is need for increased awareness in terms of what your agency is doing. Because most of the examples you have shared, I'm sure it is trained to a lot of people here. And what we have learned is that some of you, all those prayer points you are taking to your pastors, just, I mean, you can imagine, okay, I used ATM last night, and then I didn't get my money, and then you start a 7-day fast. Just go to Mr. Sholebo's office, and the problem is solved. Because those are the things we have learned. Because many of us will just be, and you wake up at night, you say you are doing deliverance. You are just punishing yourself. So it's a good thing we have learned, and we thank you so much. But I say again, let there be increased awareness for our people. But there are areas that bother me. For example, there is a notable thing in Lagos, and I think people have said it. When you buy plantain in the morning, it's green. Before close of day, it's yellow. And they said, look, it appears they are using some chemicals for these things. I think it will be useful, or helpful rather, if your agency can begin to look into this. I also know that it's only in Nigeria that we don't have expiry dates on fruits. When you go to the UK, if you are buying avocado, if you are buying strawberry, you will see expiry date. But in Nigeria, no date. As it was in the beginning, is now, and never shall be. No date. And I think we need to look into these areas. Because even when you carry the thing, and you are beginning to wonder whether it is good, the person says, "Kosi nkan to se." So I think it's something we need to look at. But I must be honest with you. Now, another aspect is we've talked about some of the things you've done, and I'm very happy about them. But what about enforcement against government agencies? You know, you answer, I'm just raising it. For consumer, a good example, many of us pay for CTC of rulings. We are consumers in the High Court. We are consumers in the High Court. We pay for CTC of judgment. It is not ready. And you keep going and keep going. Can we come to you? Well, you know, let me say something. I must thank all the speakers because there are people that I have relationship with, and I'm glad that they obliged us to come and speak. But you know, when Tunde spoke for a few whatever, when he was asked to leave office, I was abroad and I said to somebody that Tunde's, you know, the removal was a collective loss. Yes. And I'm not saying because he's here, he's an unsung hero of our nation in terms of what he has done. It wasn't an armchair CEO sitting in the office. All of those prosecutions, he took the lead. And you see that he was at the forefront of the battle. You know, incidentally, he comes from a state where the former governor is currently hiding. You know, and you see, you can see part of the contradiction in our nation. Yeah. When he wanted, you know, he was an aspirant for that office. You know, you see, so the people say, look, give us Barabbas. You know, that kind of a thing. That they rather have that. And each time, you know, he will tell you with all his sense of modesty and humility that he's not an expert in competition law. But the question is, if he's not an expert, what is he? And who will be? You know, and thank you so much. Incidentally, like they both disclosed this afternoon, himself and Dr. Lokpa, they live in the same area, which now we will go to court that they should rename it Competition Avenue. So we want to thank all of you, and truly speaking, you've raised very germane issues that we all need to think about in terms of expanding the frontiers of our practice. And I remember at about, I think it was in 2019, lunchtime at Sheraton, and Tunde was saying to me, as of our lawyers who were looking at the law, Ishembo. That is precisely what he said. Yeah. And you can see now this afternoon when he said at the end of the day, there was work, there was harvest, but the laborers are not there. So it is my hope and prayer that that book of Lamentations that we've been reading, we will stop reading it. You know, is a gold mine, there's opportunity, but there's always a sowing time and a reaping time. Many of us want to reap without sowing. It is not going to work. Don't mind me, if you don't want to do industry and you don't study and you are spending your money by anointing hall, it will not work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think the chairman has set the ball rolling there for reactions, and I want to take, such reactions, but I want us to do it in this manner. If we have reactions, let me see your hands, and if we have questions, let me see your hands. So reactions first. Reactions first. You are not sure, sir? Or is it both? Okay. So reactions and questions. Let me see your hands. Brilliant. Just 2 people.
No, 3.
3 people. Okay, that's fine. I'll pause for 2 more seconds, otherwise the court will be adjourned at that level. Okay. While I would want to go first, and then in this order, 1, 2, and 3. We closed. Okay, 4. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. I was going to ask this question, and that would be my own question from this end. Particularly to Doctor, and perhaps, I will leave it open, We have the FCCPC at the center. And then we have Lagos State, as it were, within his own jurisdiction. I'm aware that one or two other states are also wanting to replicate in the Las Copa fashion. What would be your, from where you sat and from where you are sitting now, you know, retrospectively and now, what should that synergy be? Should it be a state cloned or replicated FCCPC, or should it be a much more broader FCCPC regulated in the states? I know that FCCPC exists in regions, you know, but what would be your view retrospectively? Let me start.
Thank you. That's a very important question. And in reality, protecting consumers is not exclusive from a legislatively standpoint. However, regulating interstate commerce, so something like competition, that's certainly federal, because you're not regulating commerce within the state. And that's how it is globally anyway. And so I believe that it's important for states to also own the process of protecting citizens within the state. I've always been an advocate of how impractical it is for the FCCPC to actually manage. We're talking 774 local governments and 220 million people in every single thing they consume. So if you think about telecommunications alone, just think about how many MNOs, not me, his initials are MNO, but when I say MNO, I'm saying the mobile network operators. Think about how many complaints consumers would have on any one day. And so if you have 500 people upset about the different MNOs, then think about how many people complain about different alcoholic products or soft drinks. So there's really no practical way for one central authority to manage that. And it's not even efficient, both for the government and for the consumers, for them to all go all the way. I mean, think about if the FCCPC would get involved in something, would have to write to the company in Lagos or come to Lagos for the enforcement. And so I think what is important is for states to also take some level of ownership of protecting citizens within the state, and then some coordinated efforts. And that happened while I was here with Lagos State a lot, because states are likely to get to a point where they want to address something that potentially goes beyond their state. And so they might have a company right there just outside Ojojuberga, essentially in Ogun State, but providing services here in Lagos State. And so that's why you need a federal authority and the coordination between the Lagos State and the federal authority, and Ogun State and the federal authority. The optimal, the ideal situation is that states are doing some work, coordinating with the federal government to make sure that the protection is optimized.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you, okay then.
Thank you. It's a second opportunity to participate. And I'm glad that I stayed back. I'm indeed very, very happy I did. My question, except it was almost forcing me to turn it into a goes to Doctor. The major takeaway as I sat here from your presentation has to do with the essence of competition law as a safeguard against fair trade and competition generally. And from where I'm coming, I'm actually deeply concerned about the feasibility of that, the essence of that. In short, the operationalization of that statement vis-a-vis the character of the Nigerian state, which is purely a capitalist state, not just driven, but anchored on greed and profit. much more with a view to satisfying that greed as against the need of. So here you have the competition, all the provisions, and then you are in that capitalist environment. Please, some light.
Thank you very much, sir. Like I said earlier, the essence of competition law is to safeguard against monopolistic tendencies in the area. But like we all know, we run a capitalist system of government here. But in America, they run a capitalist system of government as well. And the laws are obeyed. Like my learned friend said earlier on, Quakers, it is all about us. About I, about you, about everybody. Until we decide to comply with the rules, nothing will change. The rules are there to guide us, to make sure that we don't cheat ourselves. There are no dominant players in the market. But we don't comply with these rules because of the way we are wired. We are wired not to obey the rules, not to obey the laws. If Tunde is a DG somewhere, thank God he is here seated. He was there for about 5 years. I don't think I ever called him for one to say, yes, there's this case or whatever. No, I won't do that. But not many people would not do that. Like Quaker said, they would rather call him because he's on the top and he knows him. It's Sunday now. I can call today. Today, why are they doing this? I'll tell your boys, I don't want that kind of a thing. And Tunde too will comply and say yes because he's his friend. But that is not the way it should be. So until we change our ways, it's just about us. The rules are there. We have fantastic rules that guard and save consumers. But here, we are not going to comply. So until we change our rules, until we change our ways, nothing will change. And that is it.
Thank you. Mine is a very brief intervention. I observe that a lot of consumers do not insist on them. Basically, number one, ignorance. And secondly, lack of faith and belief in the system. Now, I give a practical example. Just about 2 weeks ago, I was in Abuja. I walked into a superstore to buy an item, Cerelac. And so when I went to the shelf, I mistakenly picked SME. So I was at the point of making payment when the person who was to receive the money checked and then told me how much I was to pay. And then I looked at my phone. My wife sent Cerelac. I said, oh, I've made a mistake. I have to return it. And she said, no, sir, you cannot return it. I said, why? She said, items from that particular shelf cannot be returned once you pick it. I said, this is unbelievable. Now, I said, who made that law? It was at that point, they took me to that shelf. And lo and behold, I saw it boldly written, items picked from this shelf cannot be returned. And I said, call your manager. Lo and behold, the manager came. I told the manager, I said, manager, this is against common sense and logic. In fact, then, to be sincere, I was not even thinking about consumer protection. I said, this is against common sense and logic. I picked this item, I have not gone out of the supermarket, I am still here, and I am saying I want to return it to get the one I want to buy. And you are telling me I cannot return it. That is impossible. I was only being stubborn. Now, the question is, what about people who cannot insist? Because a lot of people must have been caught up by that, and they will pay. So, now, how do we sensitize the people, the consumers, about their rights. And then secondly, sir, as we speak, when you go to the MM2 now, you see a lot of passengers stranded. The other time, my flight was to be for 7 p.m. I arrived Lagos, I think, 2 a.m. because of delay. And you find out that a lot of these delays are not due to technical reasons as they always say. They are just deliberate because of maybe purely logistic reasons, or because they have a personality who they are waiting for. Greed, as a matter of fact. How do we tackle this? These are some of the issues that we have in our society. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Should I respond to that? Yes. Learned Counsel, first and foremost, you made it very clear that a lot of people are not aware of their rights. But again, you said no trust in the system. And I believe that we are the ones that we are punishing ourselves. Because I realize that most times you're like, oh, I leave it to God. I leave it to God. At the end of the day, God will not come down to help you. You have to trust in the system. Let me just make a very good example. In the course of leading this agency, my own very close sister, whose shop is in Surulere, expired products were found there. And she thought she could put a call across to me and say, oh, I said, no. If this is happening and it's closed, I have to do the needful. I said, I'm going to seal that supermarket. And she said, I can't do that. Before we go to court, we do mediation. In the course of mediation, if you are recalcitrant, what do? We fine you. She thought she wasn't going to pay. She paid. It was everywhere. And some family members were calling me. I said, if I do not do this, someone else will come and say the same thing that, oh, because you are Sholibo's friend or you are Sholibo's sister. You have to trust in the system. A question was asked now that do we deal with government agencies? And I said, I have dealt with government agencies, particularly water corporation. That is one of the reasons why I'm going to be a member of the panel tomorrow when the water regulation conference is taking place. So you have to trust in the system. And again, what just happened to you at Abuja is because you still don't believe in the fact that you have a right as a consumer to lodge your complaint. If you lodge your complaint, I said it and I made reference to Section 120 of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act. There is nothing like no refund policy. Even if you had paid, it said value for money and satisfaction. If you didn't get the value for the money, you've not opened it, you've not even left the shop. Even if you had left, because there's no issue of not display of prices of goods. Even if you had left and you find out that the prices displayed on the shelf is different from the price you paid for that particular product, you have a right to get refund. So we should not suffer in silence. We should come out and seek redress.
So thank you for this opportunity. I want to ask, we find that when it concerns banks, more often than not, when there's an issue that comes up, it has to do with the particular branch. But we know that these banks, many of them have their head offices in Lagos. So it's the fact that, for instance, a bank like UBA, maybe there's an issue in Ogun State with a branch. Does the fact that the head office in Lagos, does it give LASCOPA jurisdiction to attend to that issue?
Thank you very much. We've received so many complaints from outside the jurisdiction, but it's Lagos State Consumer Protection Agency. That's why we keep encouraging other states, like Mr. Tunde Rukera said, by establishing Consumer Protection Agency in their states. So we do not have jurisdiction outside the state. But in some cases, like I said earlier, if it has to do with anything that happens in Lagos and we want to act within the law or the act of the federal, but it has to be in Lagos. We do not have jurisdiction outside the state. Thank you. No, we do not. So far, the transaction didn't take place in Lagos State. We do not have jurisdiction.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is to the DG of LASOPA. Okay, LASOPA. The GM. Sir, my question relates to the issue of this IKEJA Electric. We have various batches that have just been infected. A situation where someone who is ordinarily having a bill of maybe 20,000 naira in a month, now you have about 200,000 over a night. And they have effect on that particular situation. In extension of that same question, you have in April, a customer who was having about 40,000 naira and now have a bill of 197,000 in April. Then in May, which they supposed to now bring it in June, now have a bill of 131,000. Then immediately they brought prepaid. And that's about 400,000 in 2 months. And now so zoom into that prepaid. Ask the tenant that before you can recharge that prepaid, you must pay 100,000 in order to recharge. How can that situation be addressed?
Thank you very much. What you were having before the prepaid meter was brought for you is estimated billings. There are so many ways you work it out. If you've been paying 21,000 before, and if you are constant with paying that 21,000 naira, you see that 400 and something thousand that was brought to you. By the time you get your prepaid meter, and they will ask you to pay a substantial amount of money, I think that is when you can come to LASCOPA. Because definitely that is how we were able to get credit adjustment for people to the tune of over 80 million naira. So there's a way they use their cap and everything, and they will tell you the actual amounts that you were supposed to pay. But if you don't know your rights, if you don't seek redress, how will you know the amount of it? You just go ahead and pay. That is, you have suffered the silence. Bring your complaint to LASCOPA. I can assure it will be well addressed and you get value for your money.
Thank you very much. I think the summary of this sitting is about two. One, industry and learning. For you and I to be able to pitch our tent, perhaps within this field of competition and consumer protection law, as well as from the side of Learned Silk Quakers, talking about attitudinal change. The laws are there, but they are not for sticks and stones. They are for you and I, either on the side of the regulator or on our own side. On this note, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we give it up once more for this panelists? Thank you so very much. As I take, please, I'm so sorry, please, we can still take our seats because there's just one more job I have to do here before you leave, sir. In appreciation of all that you have done to us today, your time, and of course,
so, good afternoon, distinguished my lords, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank discussants here. My friend, my brother, I did not know you asked now. That's a big one, you know. And I'm glad that you did that, and because that's an indication that we are winners all the way. You understand? So, Mr. Muiwa, thank you very much. We have this token for you, for honoring us, sir. We're very glad to have you in our midst this afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. Where's the photographer?
Lawyer.
Thank you very much, sir. Where's my Lord, Judge Sholade, please, if you could do us the honor of
Present.
yes, because my lords are here, and I think they should just help us to do the presentation.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My delight to give this away to the lad herself. I listened to your thoughts, and they're very, very provoking. We know we're taking a lot away this section. Thank you very much. May you be increased in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding.
Amen.
My pleasure.
One more.
My pleasure. Oh. Hi, how are you? My brother, in whom I'm very well pleased, you are extremely competent, and I make so publicly. You are still going places. The best is yet to come. Your track record will forever speak for you. I'll say, very well done. You need to publish a book. All of those should not go to waste. Generation yet unborn will read about you, will hear about you, and learn about you. Very well done.
Thank you, my lord. You may take your seat, my lord. My lord, Justice Calor, sir. It's your turn, sir. My lord, you know, I feel very happy that I now have to command my lords to come to this side of it. But I hope I will not be
Dr.
Well, I've been asked to do this to my friend, my brother. On behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association IKEJA branch, I present this to you. Thank you very much.
Photographer.
On behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association IKEJA branch, I present this to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man.
So that will take us to the end of this session. I should like to mention that we will have to take oh, very well. Of this session. That ends the entire event for today. But of course, this brings us to the end of this session. Thank you very much. So can we kindly have Milords please join us for the photo session. Very well. Can we see the cut the shot? Photograph. Are you good? Yes, who's the committee member? Please come, join us. Maybe some of us will tell us. It's too long. It's too long. Thank you so much. So now, so while we appreciate all the learned silks, seniors and colleagues who are here today, let us use this medium to inform us that the Law Week event continues tomorrow. The session starts at 9 a.m. in the morning with the session starts from 9 a.m. in the morning. Announce it.
Hello. Please note that tomorrow, Law Week program continues tomorrow by grace of God. And tomorrow we are having 2 sessions by grace of God. The first session, we are having another session tomorrow talking about public governance in troubled time as well. And by grace of God tomorrow we are having it for women. Please be on ground tomorrow.